Coming up on MacBreak Weekly, I, Micah Sargent, am in for Leo Laporte, and we've got a great show planned for you. This week I am joined by Andy Ihnatko, Jason Snell, and Christopher Lawley, YouTuber who covers all things Apple and is a whiz with his iPad. We first talk about Apple launching a new high-yield savings account for folks who have an Apple Card. It's a way to make some money, or more money, on the cash back they get from the Apple Card. Then we talk about a report from Bloomberg's Mark Gurman that suggests Apple's working on quite a few apps for its mixed reality headset. Plus, one way that a developer surprised Tim Cook at the launch of Apple's Mumbai opening, and how Apple's lockdown mode actually helped when it came to an NSO hack. Stay tuned for all that and more coming up on MacBreak Weekly.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is MacBreak Weekly with Micah Sargent, episode 866, recorded Tuesday, April 18th, 2023. No honor in being a worrier. This episode of MacBreak Weekly is brought to you by Melissa. More than 10,000 clients worldwide rely on Melissa for full-spectrum data quality and ID verification software. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. And by Cisco Meraki. With employees working in different locations, providing a unified work experience seems as easy as herding cats. How do you rein in so many moving parts? Well, with the Meraki Cloud Managed Network. Learn how your organization can make hybrid work. Visit meraki.cisco.com/twit. And by Miro. Miro is your team's visual platform to connect, collaborate, and create together. Tap into a way to map processes, systems, and plans with the whole team and get your first 3 boards for free to start creating your best work yet at miro.com/podcast. It's time for MacBreak Weekly. I, Micah Sargent, am in for Leo Laporte this week, and yes, even though he's not here, the show will work much like it always does. It's a show where we talk about Mac things, Mac people, and Mac burgers. No, not that last one. Let us get underway. Joining us first and foremost, at least on my list, it's WGBH's Andy Ihnatko. Hello, Andy.
Hey there. Hi there. Ho there, Micah. Nice to see you.
Good to see you too. Also joining us this week from just a little trip down the highway, it's Jason Snell. Hi, Jason.
Good to see you, Micah. I'm here to answer those questions. Mac who, Mac what, Mac when, Mac where, and Mac why.
I can't wait to have all of those answers laid out. Of course, Jason Snell is of sixcolors.com and the Incomparable Network, as well as fine podcaster on Relay FM. And last but certainly not least, it is YouTuber extraordinaire and a frequent guest on iOS Today. It's Christopher Lawley. Hello.
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, happy to have you here and reporting from a new location, yes?
Yes, I think this is the first time I've talked to you since I moved. So this is my new office setup.
With a keyboard wall behind you.
Yeah, there's about 15 keyboards behind me.
Do they all have superpowers? Is it like you get to choose? Today, I feel like being able to have the power of flight.
Every single one of them has different sounds and feels. They're all completely different. They all have different looks. They are all completely custom. So I would say, yes, they do kind of sort of have different superpowers. They just can't make me fly, though.
This is my writing keyboard. This is my raging keyboard. This is my chatting keyboard.
It's good to have a podcasting keyboard because then nobody hears your clicks.
I do have one of those.
In the
I have one of
podcast
those.
space, no one can hear you type.
It's more like how, when Gaga goes to an award show, like she has to have the like arrival in the limo look. She's got to have her red carpet look. She's got to have her performance look. She's got to have her audience look, a look for accepting the award, an after show look. So I'm totally in favor of, again, you got to show the fans that you came to play, that you brung it this time. And so I'm embarrassed I only have 2 keyboards in front of me, frankly.
That's okay. I realized the other day I was talking to somebody that I realized I have more variety in keyboards than I do in T-shirts. So, yeah.
Wow. That, it's a choice and you've made it and good for you. That's what I say.
Thanks.
All right. Let's get this show underway. The first thing I want to talk about today, it's relatively new announcement, at least in terms of its launch. Apple, of course, had said that they were going to be bringing, or it was going to be bringing, a savings account to its sort of financial offerings. And that has now officially launched as of yesterday. We record the show on Tuesday, April 18th. This was on April 17th. So Monday, the savings account is now available. It has a 4.15% APY, and it is linked to one's Apple Card. So, Jason, it's not that I, as a person who doesn't have an Apple Card, could just go, I'm going to start shaving my money with Apple.
Yeah, that's also, you said shaving there, which is weird, but it was a voice. I get it. It was a bit. Yeah, this is for Apple Card customers only, at least for now. It's an interesting test case. And what they're really doing is Apple Card gives you cash back on purchases. And that's like many cards do. But the way that Apple Card does it is it puts it into Apple Cash, which is available in, is it some countries now? It's not just the US, is it? Anyway, it's Apple Cash. Like you can send to other people. And so what this does is essentially give you the option of turning this on, and then your money doesn't go into Apple Cash. It goes into this bank account, essentially run by Goldman Sachs, who runs the Apple Card. And so basically it is, if you're like me, you occasionally just transfer, I've got $300 in Apple Cash, I'm going to transfer that back to my bank. I think the idea here is to encourage you to leave it where it is, because it's in the wallet app, it's accessible, you can pay from it anytime you like, but you're earning what is, for a savings account, a very good interest rate. So I think it's Apple, toying with this idea of having an Apple bank account, using Apple Cash for Apple Card members as the way to do it, and then give you an inducement to stay there. And I had somebody email me yesterday who said, well, why wouldn't I just transfer lots of money from my bank account in there because it's earning a better rate? And you could do that. I am not a giver of financial advice, but I think it is an interesting, I would say, a toe in the water for Apple, right? Which is like, what if, because from the Apple Cash itself is like this weird nether zone, like a limbo land, like just like your PayPal balance, which is like, well, it's my money, but they get to keep it and do whatever they want with it until I take it from them. And this is more like, okay, we'll put it in a bank account for you. And I think that there's something actually a little reassuring about that. So, I mean, it's an interesting test case for them.
Yeah, and it was interesting to look at the interest rate, 4.15%, which isn't necessarily a world beater, but if you limit your examination to just like credit unions and savings accounts with yields that don't absolutely stink, it's actually very competitive. Because like my bank gives 3.9. There's another credit union that does 4.4 with a minimum balance. There's no minimum balance here. I've been reading the financial, just like you, Jason. Like, I'm not a financial person, so I've been reading like what do the financial analysts have to say about it, and they're basically giving it pretty much a thumbs up, and much for the reasons that you're giving them. You were giving everybody, that it's a way for Apple to keep your money in the encourage you to keep the money in the ecosystem, using a technique that they're not used to doing by actually giving you something in return, as opposed to locking you in and making it very, very expensive for you to leave.
Now, this is sort of a different aspect from, we talked before about Apple's entry into the buy now, pay later game, the buy now, pay later space. And we continue to see Apple, as you mentioned, Jason, sort of dip their toe into all of these aspects of financing. Is there anything left? What do we have after savings account, buy now, pay later, credit card, and then the sort of Apple Cash limbo that can also, I mean, we know that with Apple Cash, if you've got a family account, then you can give different people different amounts of money regularly. So you can have a kid that sort of gets their, I guess, allowance through Apple Cash. So it seems like they've covered a lot of the bases. Is there anything left in financing that Apple or financial stuff that Apple would want to do?
I mean, on one level, what I want to say is anything that they can.
Yeah, fair.
Part of
yeah.
it. I think actually Apple's biggest challenge in this area, I mean, they are trying to spin up their own thing. This is all through Goldman Sachs. And at least based on Mark Gurman's reports at Bloomberg, they really want to create their own financial services and run this all themselves. I think that being forced to have a financial partner, it's an age-old story, right? Which is they want to enter a field and disrupt it, but that field's got pesky regulations. And so you end up going with a partner who's already gone through it all. And for Goldman Sachs, this is actually a weird kind of outlier to their core business. And I've definitely seen during all of these various sort of banking instabilities the last few months, people wondering if Goldman Sachs actually wants to be in this business, in not just Apple specifically, but sort of like retail banking at this level in general. Like, I think Apple would prefer to do it all themselves, but they found it hard. And look no further than the fact that a lot of Apple's financial services are still not available outside the US or in very limited number of countries. So I think that owning it themselves is a big frontier for them. And I think on top of that, it's getting it worldwide, which, you know, they have to go through the banking regulations or get a new partner in every single place and then tie it in with their software because they've got all this custom software. Like the Wallet app, we forget it's not just let's make a deal with some bank in New Zealand or something. It's like, well, no, it has to be wired in somehow to get back to the Wallet app because that's where the UI is for everything. So I think that's my guess is it's the same old story with Apple. It's going to be world domination and doing it all themselves.
Now, I'm curious, do any of you, if you care to share, use any of Apple's, whether it be the Apple Card and now the savings account? Because one of the things that Apple regularly touts, and they bring it up in this newsroom piece is, quote, the new savings account from Goldman Sachs builds upon the financial health benefits that Apple Card already offers. And financial health seems to be this through phrase that they're using in everything. And so I am curious, because I don't have any of these accounts. Do you feel like there is a true focus on financial health with the offerings that Apple Card and surrounding products have that you're not finding from other credit cards you may have had over time or other financial products you may have had over time?
No, I don't think so. I think that one of the most important parts of this product is the card itself. They've made a really, really cool card that you kind of want to have. And if you have the kind of credit where you can just ask for a card and get it, yeah, it's a fun other thing to have in your wallet. It's great to have that kind of integration into Apple Wallet, but it's not, I wouldn't say that it's like the way that the iPhone changed the relationship between the phone and the carrier, and basically dropping all the limits of an institution that was not ready to handle people's needs in the 21st century. I don't think they're changing banking that way. I don't think that there's any kind of a social positive element to this. Not that there has to be, but it really is, I think, at this stage, Apple deciding here's something we can do that will enhance Apple products, i.e. the iPhone and Apple Wallet. Won't cost us anything. It'll tie people closer to our brand, and it's very low risk. And it's because we're partnering with Goldman Sachs, we won't go to jail, at least in the first 5 to 10 years as we spin this up. I mean, this is why, like, as with anything else, I mean, people are likely to, I think that people have a trust relationship with Apple such that they would be interested in getting a card with Apple that they may not necessarily be interested in getting with another institution, even though you still have to read through that entire PDF. You still have to make sure that you read through and you say you have to that you're bound by an arbitration clause with Goldman Sachs for any disputes. And so to opt out of that, you have to send an iMessage, and you won't figure that out unless you, of course, read read all the documents, which maybe you're not going to do because it's so frictionless to simply click a button and maybe get this cool new Apple product, i.e. this nice nice piece of metal with the technology inside it for your wallet.
Yes, thank you. I was going to ask if you had any thoughts.
So I do have an Apple Card, and I mostly use it for business stuff, like, hey, buying a new whatever Apple thing to review, just because you get the 3% back and it's easy to separate from my personal credit card and stuff like that. The one thing I will say that I think it does really well, the Wallet app does, is when you go to pay it, it shows like, hey, you can pay the minimum and you're gonna end up owing this much in interest, or you can pay a little bit more and you'll pay a little less in interest. And my other credit card, my personal credit card, doesn't do any of that. It's just like pay the minimum or pay whatever you want or whatever, you can pay it off. And at least in the Wallet app, I will say it does a nice job kind of showing you like, hey, the more you pay, the less interest you have, which seems like a no-brainer, but when I was a lot younger, I made some mistakes with credit cards that I should not have made. And I ended up really paying for it for a long time because of that, because I didn't understand what a credit card was. So I don't know if it's not perfect by any means. But it at least does a good job at explaining like, hey, pay a little bit more and you'll actually pay a little less in the long run if you can, kind of thing.
Yeah, I think it's the financial equivalent of when we talk about streaming and we talk about how like Amazon and Apple are not playing the same game as the entertainment companies because they're looking at a big picture with their ecosystem. It feels a little like that for financial stuff, which is they want you as an Apple customer at the heart of their platform and their ecosystem, and financial is part of that, but they want you to view them as a trustworthy partner, right? And so you don't get that sense of like, they're going to really take me for a ride here, because they have bigger things in mind, right? Like they want a long relationship with you, and that does show. I mean, I don't think all banks are this way, but I think that the financial industry in general, is not necessarily worried about your financial health at the level that Apple is, because it's not the only business Apple is in. Apple doesn't need to make all of its profit on this credit card that it's got. And I also have an Apple card. And when you buy a lot of Apple stuff, it really, just for the cash back, it's actually a pretty good deal. Yep. And I buy a lot of Apple stuff. So, so I think that's an area where they do differentiate themselves a little bit, is because they're not playing the same game. They're not getting all their money from the financial sector. It's just one piece of a much larger puzzle. And so they can afford to think big picture when a lot of their competitors in that space are not.
Yeah, the only downside, I think, is that like when you take a look at the offerings that like your current bank, whatever the hub of your money is, your current offerings, if you haven't really taken a look to see exactly what their apps can do and what other services they provide can do, it's the services provided by an Apple Card seem pretty thin. Again, that's not something that I'm faulting Apple for. They're not necessarily they're not really trying to be a financial institution yet. But when I talk about having a social component to it, I'm talking about things like things that for instance, the fact that they're limited to the United States right now means that they can't address a very, very serious problem worldwide, which is simple access to banking. There are so many people, even in the United States, who just don't have access to banking services. And even if they just simply said, and this would be outreach with a capital O for Apple. And so again, I'm not faulting them for this, but just as an example, if they simply said that we're going to make it easier for people who don't have a fixed address or people who have sporadic income to be able to pay their bills as efficiently and as securely as somebody who makes $10,000 a month, that would be moving the needle. Even for people who have more knowledge about financial operations and financial health, the ability to simply say, here's your dashboard. I know. Oh, so you're considering paying down this debt by getting ahead. Actually, that's a very cheap loan you have. You'd be better off, if you're going to be paying down debt, you'd be better off paying it down over here instead. We're not trying to dissuade you from paying down debt, but hey, don't pay down the 3.5% loan. Pay down the 8.5% loan. And third-party services that have started to crop up that will just simply say, did you know you're still paying $30 a month for America Online? do you want us to cancel that for you? Like, yes, I do. Jeez.
And there are some startups out there that do that sort of thing. Exactly. And I wonder in the long run if Apple might consider something like that, because there are startups where I've tried a couple of them where you connect it to your bank and it basically does send you things like, this bill went up. Did you know that? And did you know why? Or did you know that you have that AOL subscription that you got from a CD-ROM back at your grandma's house, and now you're still paying it out? So yeah, I think that that's not the point of the Apple Card, but there is a whole other interesting sector here that Apple has the advantage, because they don't need to, right? Like, I mean, it's such a huge advantage. You could argue that it's using power from their strength in another market to infiltrate a different market, and you've got some antitrust questions there. But like the idea that in streaming, Apple is not concerned about making money on Apple TV Plus. They just want the big picture. In finance, they're not, I mean, they want to make money, but like, it's not the only place they make money. They can do things differently. That's one way that they can disrupt. And to Andy's point, there are a lot of other places in this sector that I think that Apple could potentially go, but they've been so slow. And I really do think it comes down to the problem of international banking, pesky banking regulations again, and how, they want to do things differently. And in the US, they've managed to get it set up, and now they want to replicate that. And I imagine they just bring their US setup to other countries, and some of those countries just look at it and go, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah, we're not doing that here, thanks. But I love what you are potentially suggesting for a future where Apple is also playing in that space, because my main bank account that I have has the bank has slowly added some of those features over time, where now you can sort of keep track of these subscriptions, these recurring charges. And then if that recurring amount changes over time, then it'll let me know. And it has all of these little sort of built-in management features. And if Apple is having some of its business here, it would be cool to see the Apple take on all of that, and to have, the Siri intelligence of the future, where Siri's going, hey, suddenly Comcast has charged you $10 extra this month for your bill, and it should not have. What do we want to do about that? That would be great. All right, we should definitely move along here, because there is a new story just about an hour ago released over on Bloomberg from Mark Gurman. And I found this fascinating. I haven't obviously had the opportunity to read the whole thing, but Gurman says, according to people familiar with the matter, that Apple is working on, and working very hard and working very quickly on, a bunch of new apps for its upcoming mixed reality headset. That the company is going, well, if there needs to be this quote unquote killer app that's there, maybe we just need to make sure that it's there on day one, and we'll make sure that it exists. According to the report, they're working on collaboration apps, which could be the extension of the Freeform app. Also virtual workouts and meditation, which could be an extension of the Fitness Plus service, as well as some games that could be an extension of Apple Arcade. So I am curious to hear everyone's thoughts on this. It's one of those, what is it? It's not if you can't beat them, join them. It's if it does, I don't even know. If we build it, they will come, I guess.
I think it's like what Mel Brooks said about comedy. Like, if you're gonna walk up to the bell, don't tap the bell, ring the bell. So yeah, it's also, I saw this story just before the show too. Didn't know what to make of it, because it's still rumors, and we don't necessarily know how sophisticated any of these kinds of apps are going to be. But I think there's a reason why, like when the first iPad came out, the loaner units, they had like the Marvel Comics app on it. They had the New York Times app on it, because to help people make sense of what this thing could be about, you have to give them some practical examples. I don't think you could just simply give them, hey, this is a developer platform. Here's a web browser. Here's a way you can watch YouTube videos in a glowing rectangle in front of your face. good luck with the rest of it. But so yeah, it makes sense to have a fitness app. I'm looking forward to, I'm looking forward to seeing the first Apple reality headset entries. And you've ever seen the Reddit subreddit, VR to ER, like injuries people have suffered, but in their gaming headsets because they couldn't see what they're doing and they wound up like punching a wall or something like that. Yeah. And so, yeah, so it's going to be interesting. I mean, I won't go through stuff that like, I'm sure I've talked about over and over again, but Apple, there is no precedent for this outside of games, and Apple really has to make sure, Apple has to be patient and allow other people to tell them what's so awesome about this. They can't really do that out of the box like they can with a laptop or a watch or a phone right now. So yeah, I'm not surprised that they're going to be delivering. If you ship a phone, you got to have a notepad app on it. You got to have a web browser on it. And so I don't necessarily know what you absolutely have to have on a VR headset, but Apple seems to have an idea. And so that's going to help them out, I'm sure.
I find it fascinating too. They talk about in this piece, quote, one selling point for the headset will be viewing sports in an immersive way. The company already offers games from Major League Soccer and Major League Baseball on Apple TV Plus, but it's looking to make that a richer experience. This goes back, Jason, to what you were just talking about, where when Apple has this focus that can be on so many different fields, then when they come out with a new platform, they have the opportunity to adapt what they've created to these different platforms. And we saw this with Mac OS switching to Apple Silicon. Then we saw how many iPad apps could almost just, you flip a switch and then the iPad app can be launched on the Mac. And of course, a developer could improve upon the experience, but that base experience was there. And that is one of the things that is mentioned in this piece is many iPad apps on day one will be able to sort of run, and then of course can be adapted in subtle ways to give kind of that bridge until the final system is ready. So it's really fascinating to see if you've got if you got all of these different offerings, these services offerings, how, okay, we've got the stream. All we need to do is add the UI in a way that plays in VR or AR, and suddenly you're watching Major League Soccer with an overlay that sort of exists in 3D space. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, and what Alex would say that they bought NextVR too. We should mention that. Like they're interested in VR sports, and I think, Micah, you hit at it, which is Apple's ambitions are large, but they're also all cross-linked with one another. And we're not going to get out the yarn board here and like put up all the ways that it's all connected, man. But it is kind of right. Like their sports ambition is, at least some aspect of it, they're thinking this could be big in VR, but they're also thinking about the TV, and they're thinking about your phone, and they're thinking about your iPad, and they're thinking about your Mac. And that's, I'd say, one of the things that's unique about Apple is they have so many of these platforms. It's one of the reasons why they've tried very hard to unify their software platform, because nobody, not Apple nor a third party, is going to write a different app for all of them. And so, that's why, because Apple's playing a game nobody else is, right? They have so many different operating systems for so many different devices. It's really, and it's untenable, really, which is why they're all variants. They're all becoming, other than the Mac, they're all becoming, and even the Mac a little bit, variants of iOS in some way, because that's for the app development environment especially. So you're right. I think that's what's going on here. And it makes sense, right? Like, you've got to prime the pump. The thing can't ship and not do anything until apps ship for it. You need to also inspire developers and say, here are the fundamentals, but also we're showing you how we envision apps on this device working. And that's Apple at its best. And some would argue that maybe on the app side, it hasn't been at its best in a while in terms of their own apps. But at its best, those apps are exemplars, right? And the third-party developers say, I don't know how to build this app. I'm not quite sure how to approach it. How does Apple do it, right? And if you're launching a brand new product and platform like this VR headset might be, then you oughta, not only do you need to make sure that it does the things that you think are important, like fitness and collaboration and all of those things, but you also want to set the stage and say, this is the bar for apps. We want apps that are like this or better than this. So I appreciate Mark Gurman's detailed report of sort of what they're working on, but like, They absolutely have to do this. Of course they do, because that's otherwise they're selling people like a headset that doesn't do anything and has no apps, is not anything, right? It's really like a sleep mask you can get at a hotel.
You put it on, and there's a blinking command prompt.
Ready.
Thanks for the $2,000.
Syntax error in it's a very sophisticated Apple II simulator is what they've said.
There you go.
Emacs in VR.
Christopher, according
VI in VR, Andy. Come on, VI in VR.
Oh, let's not get started with that again.
But according to Gurman, one of the main sort of focuses, that may be a pun, anyway, in its first iteration is actually going to be on gaming. What do you think about that, given Apple's long history of not really being the main gaming platform? People tend to go elsewhere for their, I should say, for their AAA gaming, right?
Yeah, I would also say Apple basically has a bottomless checkbook. They got the Scrooge McDuck pile of money. Like, they can, if they really want to make this about gaming, they don't need to do it internally. There are plenty of companies out there. I just got the PSVR 2 when that launched like a month ago or whenever that was. Who knows? Time is weird. And playing that has just made me a VR believer. Before that, I was kind of on the fence. Like, the VR experiences that I had weren't like the highest quality. I got motion sick. I just wasn't feeling like it left me not feeling great. But the PSVR 2, if I remember correctly, and this is off the top of my head, it's 4K displays for each eye. And the rumor for the Apple one is it's supposed to be 8K displays for each eye. So it's supposed to be a really high quality display. And if that's the case, like, that would look fantastic. Like, I'm very excited for that idea. And if Apple really does go to, these companies that have been making big VR games that I'm trying to think of off the top of my head, and I can't think of the names of them, they could seriously make some great stuff for their headset, or just port some existing VR games over. Like, Beat Saber is super popular, or the Star Wars game, Tales from whatever. But there's a lot of stuff out there that could be ported over that's already out there. But again, Apple has a bottomless pit of money. They can go to any company and be like, hey, would you like to make a game for our fancy new VR headset? And I highly doubt there would be a lot of companies that would say no, because if you look at the last major product launches from Apple, you have the Apple Watch, iPad, iPhone, all of them have been hugely successful. It would be weird to bet against this and say, I don't think this is going to work out. But VR, the biggest aspect of VR is gaming. And I know there was that report months and months ago about gaming not be a huge focus of this headset, and that just never sat right with me. Like, it just felt weird. Like, how could it not be? I'm excited for this kind of like hybrid approach, though, that if they truly are focused on gaming, but also I could plug this into my Mac and edit a video in VR space, I will totally do that.
Chopping up that timeline like Fruit Ninja.
Yep. Oh yeah. If I could do that, that would be, it would slow me down. It would absolutely take longer to edit a video that way than it would be with a keyboard and mouse, but I would absolutely do it.
Be nice to get a workout while you're working on your edit, for sure.
Yeah. It's you're killing two birds with one stone.
Yeah, there was just hit the news like a couple of days ago that Beat Saber reached $250 million in revenue. So yeah, there's some money in VR gaming, and let's not forget that gaming is absolutely the lion's share of the income that Apple makes from the App Store. So yeah, that could be a nice cash cow. I agree, though. It would be a little bit disappointing if Apple only gave us like a really expensive and nice game console. We're all hoping that Apple's going to push the needle a little bit to give us something that will kind of justify its expense, whether it's $1,000, $2,000, or $3,000, as something that I will actually I will prefer to do certain kinds of work or certain types of interactions with people via this VR headset, as opposed to this is something that I have nothing to do. I've got time on my hands. I know I'll spend some time with this Apple VR headset. I mean, we didn't think watches weren't really that interesting as far as technology goes, but they absolutely managed to make that into wearables, into an actual category where lots of other people couldn't. And it wasn't just because they said, hey, look, you can have different watch faces. Well, actually, explicitly because they didn't let you have different watch faces. But again, if all they did was say that, hey, look, it's a watch and you could put your iTunes playlist on it, like, thank you very much. I'm glad I didn't go to AliExpress and buy something exactly like that for $7.30 in quantities of 50. This is why I think a while ago I actually did think that maybe the last thing Apple wants is for this to be a really, really popular game platform. But that was a while ago, and I was wrong back then, because anything they can do to make this thing relevant, if they can make this even into the greatest game headset for virtual reality available on the market, just like there are people who won't spend more than $500 or $600 for an Xbox, but they'll spend, and other people will spend $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on a premium gaming PC. If that's what gets you to the next version of this, if that's what lets Apple work towards the $500 version of this, the augmented reality version of this, anything that keeps the flop sweat off of the inside of these goggles, I'm for it.
It feels like they are managing expectations on one level, right? Which is they don't want to come out and say, oh boy, it's for games. Games are going to be great, because they know it's going to be limited. It's going to be very expensive. And people are going to say, well, for games, $3,000, that's ridiculous. And they also know that there are going to be limited apps there, because a lot of their apps are going to be sort of sourced from mobile, or they're going to be, older apps that have been converted like they have been for other platforms. Also, I would posit, and this is just as somebody, I've been watching Apple almost as long as Andy has. Andy's got me beat there, but almost as long. We were back in the bad time. I will say, I don't think Apple's ever gotten games. I think Apple makes platforms. I was actually reading Steve Jobs's the book that Steve Jobs archive put out, and I was struck by some comment in it about Apple and gaming, and I remember thinking, oh, Apple doesn't even get big business. Like, people ask about Apple and Fortune 500, and to this day, every quarter they talk about their Fortune 500 business and how, everybody's using Macs and they're adopting iPads, and isn't it great? It's like, the truth is Apple's a consumer product company. They make consumer products. They think about individual users. That's what they do. Everything else is a spin-off effect of that. Like, their success in business is because the people in the business want their products. Their success in gaming has always been because they built hardware that prioritized things that either led to places where people wanted to play games, or led developers to want to develop games, or led them to look at the hardware and say, oh, this would be a good gaming platform. And then they lean into it maybe, but like, it's never. So what I'm saying is, I'm okay with Apple looking at this headset and being like, games, I guess, whatever. Because if they really tried to build it as a gaming thing, I think it wouldn't work. I think that this is maybe Apple staying within itself and being like, just make the product, the games will happen. And I think that's probably the right call.
That makes sense. Yeah. It's going to be, working with some specific developers, and then, of course, making it available to others as after it's announced. I also wanted to mention just a couple of little tidbits, again, from the Gurman article, that when we've known this for some time, wearers are going to be able to operate the headset using eye and hand gestures, like pinch and poke and all sorts of things, but then also an in-air virtual keyboard. I thought that was an interesting tidbit, as well as, again, once again, according to the rumors from Gurman from Bloomberg, that it will have biometric unlock, but instead of doing like a Touch ID button on the side or a full Face ID, yes, it's going to scan the user's eyes to unlock, which makes sense. It's right there next to your eyes.
Remember when how Apple kept saying that, no, we can't have a touch screen on a Mac because people don't want to do this all the time when they're doing stuff. And now it looks like they're going to be building a device that requires you to Frankenstein your way through emails now. That's interesting.
I'm really hoping the keyboard thing is basically a virtual overlay for your physical keyboard that's on your desk, kind of like what the Meta Quest does. Yeah. Because I don't want to sit there and just like do this, like type in the air. Like that just feels weird to me. I mean, we've already established I have a keyboard problem, but yeah, like I like my mechanical keyboards. I like the feel and sound of them. I don't want to sit there and do this in the air. It just, and for those that are listening, I'm just literally poking. Yeah. It seems weird to me.
Very impressive. Yeah, I think there's a hierarchy of VR keyboard, right? Like VR keyboard number one is exactly what you mentioned, which is it's a real keyboard and the cameras see that it's a keyboard and they pass it through, and Meta does that, and that's a very clever way of saying, yeah, we know you have a keyboard, here it is. And then the layer down from that, I would say, is probably like a virtual keyboard surface on an actual surface, like a table or desk in front of you. And then down at the bottom of the list is, wave your fingers in the air like you just don't care. You think touchscreen autocorrect is bad. Just wait until Air autocorrect. It will be terrible.
Yeah, that by far, when I see the idea of user interfaces through virtual reality, the stuff that gets me most excited is when the hardware has ability to detect surfaces and objects, and the ability to map control surfaces and objects onto real world objects, so that you basically to have like a virtual 4K screen in front of me, just as if, let's say, I'm not necessarily doing Photoshop through virtual reality. I just have a screen in front of me. This is what I packed with me on the plane. This tiny, remarkably tiny little device, and then simply the fact that it can sense that, oh, you're basically sitting at a desk with a flat surface. We're going to put like a color selector right here. We're going to put some sliders right here next to it on the desk. And so when you actually try to slide the slider, you will feel something underneath your fingers. I'm sure most people have seen demos where it maps the entire room. And so you are seeing you're not seeing anything through live cameras. However, it is reproducing everything that is an object or a hard surface in there. So you could freely walk through your room full of furniture out the door and navigate correctly, and then hit the light switch, and you're actually hitting a light switch. That's the sort of stuff that I think is next level stuff. The problem with all kinds of technology is that the science fiction comes before the fiction, which means that we get this idea of what this future technology is going to be like through the eyes of a Hollywood production designer that has to make sure it looks good and that it registers to an audience what's happening. So that's why there's always Tony Stark's point of view heads up is this myriad of just dials and switches. In the Tom Cruise movie, it's like these virtual keys that you're actually lifting up and touching. The reality is going to be much better because it's going to be practical, but it's going to be nothing. The problem is going to be when you have engineers who are like, oh, well, we're going to do that thing where people are just going to be waving their hands in the air. Like, no, we're really not. We're just going to have literally a touch surface on the actual wall that isn't there that basically says, okay, get my email or something. That's the sort of stuff that's going to be kind of interesting. We can't picture it.
All right. I think it is time for us to picture a short break before we come back with loads more news here on MacBreak Weekly this week with Andy Ihnatko, Jason Snell, and Christopher Lawley, who is joining us. I want to tell you about Melissa, the address experts who are bringing you this episode of MacBreak Weekly. Address verification is the foundation for business success. What can accurate addresses do to help your business? Well, about 63% of shopping journeys happen online, or at least they start there. Approximately 20% of shipping addresses contain spelling mistakes, incorrect postal codes or house numbers, and those pesky formatting errors that can confuse the machines behind the scenes. Having solutions like an address autocomplete service can ensure new and returning customers always receive their packages on time and in the right place. An autocomplete service helps lower cart abandonment as it speeds up the buying process for the customer. The average large-sized e-commerce site can gain a 35% increase in conversion rates by improving its checkout design. At the core of quick, accurate delivery is reliable and clean data. Roughly 41% of consumers say fast delivery is the most critical aspect of their online shopping experience. And 56% of shoppers say they aren't going to purchase from the same store again if they're unsatisfied with their shipping experience. Verified addresses help with marketing campaigns and also shorten sales cycles. Retailers rely on default address verification validation built into their platforms, which is not always accurate or intuitive. Having inline validation, it goes ahead and corrects those addresses as they're entered. So then you're kind of working with the person who's making the purchase to make sure that it is exactly as it should be. An estimated 20 to 40% of customer records in a single marketing campaign are duplicates. It could be up to almost half of the records. Carriers can charge $10 to $15 per parcel for address correction. This consequence proves that having an address verification solution will lower unnecessary waste and costs. Melissa's address verification tools leverage 38 years of address verification expertise. Flexible to fit into any business model, Melissa's global service can verify addresses for 240 countries and counting to ensure only valid billing and shipping addresses enter your system. And this is great, Melissa is SOC 2, HIPAA, and GDPR compliant, so you know your data is always in the best hands. Make sure your customer contact data is up to date. Get started today with 1,000 records cleaned for free at melissa.com/twit. That's melissa.com/twit. And we thank you, Melissa, for sponsoring this week's episode of MacBreak Weekly. All right, back from the break, I am Micah Sargent, subbing in for Leo Laporte this week, who will be back very soon. And we have a great episode of MacBreak Weekly that is still underway. We have a section of the show notes where the hosts are able to add stories that they would like to have covered. And I want to talk now about one of the stories from there. There was recently the Mumbai opening of an Apple store, and a developer brought a special Mac to the opening, which shocked and surprised Tim Cook. Tell us about this story.
Oh, well, so Tim is in Mumbai right now, doing a lot of business. They're opening the first, I believe, the first actual Apple store in India right now. It's a very big move. We haven't talked about, the world hasn't talked about the iPhone problem, quote unquote, recently, but there's still a lot of people that markets that Apple hasn't absolutely devastated as they have in the United States. There's still a lot of opportunity in lots of different countries. So making sure that Apple has a really emphatic presence in India is a big opportunity for Apple. So he was there to open up the store, and a fellow who was described by local press as a user experience developer decided to bring his Mac SE with him to the show opening. And there's the most adorable. Oh, by the way, he was also dressed in Steve Jobs cosplay, like the mock turtleneck, the jeans, everything. And so there's this really adorable like video on Twitter of Tim Cook like, oh my God, you brought a classic Mac, that's awesome. And so I guess we find out the way to get to the head of the line for the photo ops is to bring like 40-year-old Apple technology. It's good to see, like, now that we're in the United States, we've grown a little bit jaded to like new Apple stores and new product launches. It's good to see like that those early 2000s energy like being rekindled in these new markets. So I thought that was pretty I thought Tim was pretty adorable here.
Yeah, I mean, Jason, you've got plenty back there you could bring with you to an opening if you wanted to.
I mean, they're heavy is the problem.
Yeah.
I don't really want to lift all of these things back there, but yeah, it's, it is always fascinating to talk about Apple, because Apple is simultaneously an enormous business. And I mean, actually like Disney in a way. And I wonder if Steve Jobs and Bob Iger ever spent some time talking about this, which is, it is a business, but it's an entertainment business, sort of, right? There are fans.
It's a culture,
and it is a culture, and it is not just an ecosystem. I mean, and it's funny because Disney is an entertainment company, but they think they have an ecosystem, and Apple is a computer company, but they have an ecosystem, right? And they all kind of like, and they have their adherents and they have their fans, and it's got value, but it's also not the only thing that's going on. And like, I think it's one of the fun things about covering Apple is that you end up walking this line between there are people who will do cosplay, and also there are Wall Street financial analysts who are very concerned about large amounts of funding investing in or not in Apple. Those things are happening at the same time. And if it's New York Comic Con, the same place.
All right. The next story here, and I'm really excited that this is being simplified even more. If you go to apple.com/shop/trade -in. So maybe not entirely easy to get to the website, but the Apple trade-in site has been improved, updated, and made, I think, simpler, where if you go to that page, you will get a very easy to understand set of buttons you can press, essentially. So I can choose, I want to trade in an iPhone, an Apple Watch, an iPad, a Mac, an Android, or some other product. And in the case of other products, they're probably going to be items that you're recycling. Android devices. So if I have a Samsung Galaxy S22 5G, for example, I could get up to $225 in value that I could then put toward a new phone. If I was trading in a MacBook Pro, I could get up to $730. So you get to go through and kind of figure out what device you're hoping to trade in, how much of sort of value you can get from it. And then it is going to give you a credit that you can apply to making a new purchase. And even if it isn't eligible for a credit, then they will go ahead and recycle the item for free. So you can kind of feel good about making sure that the item is properly recycled. They have this online option. Of course, you can do these trade-ins in store as well, if that's the way that you prefer to do it. But yeah, I think this sort of kiosk style that makes it a little bit simpler to do your trade-in is a great idea.
Yeah, and it also makes it frictionless. That if your thumb is kind of on the buy it now button in the Apple Store to buy your next Mac, and you're like, oh, geez, that's a little bit too much. Hey, I wonder if I can trade in my Mac for something, rather than, okay, so what services do I go to? I don't want to sell on eBay. What services do I go to? Like, oh no, don't even leave the site. Don't leave your cart right in front of you. Hey, fella, we'll see what we can do for you. Bring it, bring the kids. We got free balloons and hot dogs. Yeah, and it's pretty cool. It is a very, very wide portfolio of things you can trade in. Obviously, they're probably not interested in my 2012 Intel Mac Mini, but it's not bad, the list of stuff. But once again, it really is all about how do we get people to sign on the line that is dotted? How do we close that sale? And even though unless they've changed their relationships, Apple is still farming this out to an outside recycling company. So hopefully when they get their hands on it, they won't look at like a scratch on the bottom of it underneath one of the rubber feet and say, oh, well, instead of $750, we can only give you $80. And if you want to cancel, it'll cost you $100 to have this shipped back to you. But yeah, it's, again, anything that makes it easier to close that deal and put that button, that's Apple's all for it. And it's long past time for them to put this all under one portal, as opposed to where do I go? How do I chase it? Or am I going to get this offer at time of sale? Or can I make that part of my planning as I'm trying to figure out what kind of configuration I want?
Yeah, I had a bunch of Apple products I was selling last year, and they weren't old. They weren't, they were just a few years old, and it was like, okay, I need to get rid of these. I need to clean out my closet and stuff like that. And I looked at Apple's trade-in, and I looked at other sites. I looked at like what those devices were going for on eBay and stuff like that. And Apple's trade-in value is not very competitive. It's in fact, it was the worst out of all of them at the time. Maybe it's changed since then. But at the time, it wasn't even close. I ended up selling them privately just because I ended up finding somebody I knew that needed a couple of these devices and then finding somebody else that needed the other. And, sold them privately and made more money that way. Now, that being said, like what Andy was saying, convenience trumps so much else for a lot of people. Like, hey, I want to buy this new MacBook Pro. And like Andy was saying, maybe it's just a bit too much. You could sell your old one or, old iPhone that's laying around or whatever. And that can help go towards that, because at the end of the day, Apple really just wants you to keep buying new stuff because they are a company and that's how capitalism works. But yeah, I'm glad the trade-in site is a lot cleaner, easier to use now, because it was very confusing in the past.
I agree. I certainly got confused visiting it, and more importantly, sending people there who were thinking about getting new devices. And they're where, how, what?
It was terrible. Last year, I sent somebody to the website and they saw the iMac price and they thought that was the price for just all iMacs in general. The price because the way it was phrased, it just made it seem like they were going to get, I'll just say like $1,750 or whatever it was, like the maximum price that the Apple was buying iMacs for. It made it seem like that. They didn't put in any of their serial number information or anything like that. And then once I was like, oh no, you got to do this, and they did that, the price went way down, and they were really disappointed.
All right, next, let's move on to talk about sports. Jason, do you watch, or have you watched, and how do you watch multiple? There's the who and the what and the how. Multiple baseball games at once. Is that
why?
Thing? And why?
Why would you do such a thing?
And don't forget the when.
Yeah, and when do you find the time?
Well, the answer is it's mostly college football, and so it's Saturday. But yeah, one of the beautiful things, like my old TV had like a picture-in-picture mode, which was kind of fun, and Apple has a picture-in-picture mode across all its devices and on the Apple TV. But where it's really at is being able to do a 2-up, 3-up, or 4-up, as we like to call it, the quad box. On NFL Red Zone, they sometimes go up to the Octabox. I don't recommend that doing that at home. That's only for the professionals. But the quad box you can do at home. I use Fubo as my virtual cable over the, it's a over the internet, but like YouTube TV or Hulu Plus Live TV. And Fubo came out of sports. Sports is sort of their motivating factor, and as a result, they have a 4-up mode, so you can just keep adding channels until you've got 4 little 1080 videos playing on your 4K TV, which is actually, it's pretty sweet, and you can move around the audio and you can zoom into one or zoom it out, drop things off. The reason this came up, a couple of stories about this. One is YouTube TV got NFL Sunday Ticket, which is all of the live NFL games out of market. And they're building a quad box feature. They're building a multi-view feature because they know people are going to want to put up 2, 3, 4 games at once. Now, Apple is doing it. And in the latest tvOS beta, there is a multi-view feature that is not picture-in-picture. This is multi-view. Right now, it is just in the TV app. They're doing it mostly because they have Major League Soccer, which plays lots of games at once. And the idea there is that if you want to call up 2, 3, 4 MLS games on Apple's TV app, you can do it, and they will all be there in a beautiful grid for you to watch and flip between and zoom in and zoom out of. And it's a lot of fun. Like I've definitely done that with college football and a little bit with Major League Baseball or for multiple sports. I'd say the big missing piece is that this is in the TV app. And what you really want in the long run is for this to be in tvOS at the top level that you can take. Because the one place where tvOS does a really bad job with this kind of multi-view stuff is across apps, right? Individual apps do multi-view, but you can't do multi-view across apps. They're individual app implementations. And in that way, this new implementation is a disappointment because it seems like it's just in the TV app. However, it's in the player. I'm really suspicious that they rushed this feature ahead for the MLS season, and I wonder if this will be a system-wide feature in tvOS, and I sure hope it is, because the truth is sports rights are all fractured. So you might have the MLB app for that game, and then you might have something like Fubo or YouTube TV for a basketball game, and then you might have a soccer match that's on the Apple TV app, and you want to put them all up as a 3-up or throw in a tennis match or something, and now you're in 4-up from 2, 3, 4 different apps. tvOS can't do that right now, and it should be able to, but they haven't built it yet. But in the short term, the good news is that Apple has built a quad box interface. They can show up to 4 video streams at once on your screen in the TV app right now just for MLS. And I'm hopeful that that will become something that we can just do anywhere. My joke is if you don't like sports, it's okay. Put up 4 classic movies in all the corners of your screen and just, you're going to become 4 times as cultured as watching only one. So anyway, it's a fun feature and I hope Apple expands it out because right now it's all siloed in per app.
Yeah. I kept thinking that this is for really, really intense sports betting and for people who are into fantasy sports, people who are like, whether I go to work tomorrow or not depends on how these 3 games turn out. And not because I'm going to win a lot of money, but because if things go really bad for me, I'm going to just grab my go bag, and
As-
Ernesto Fortescue is going to be moving and managing a Cinnabon in Omaha, Nebraska tomorrow.
That's probably part of it. I do not bet on sports. What I'll say is that I find it really great if the team you love is not playing and you just sort of want to be entertained. Like with the Major League Baseball app, and on their website, you can actually do a 4-up view on the webpage. It's just not in their Apple TV app yet. But if it's the team I care about, I will watch their game. But if it's not, then I might put up 4 games and zoom in when something interesting is going on, like there's runners on base, or that game got close, or this other game that I was watching is in a commercial, so now I'm going to flip over and watch this. Or again, you got multiple things where you're keeping tabs on the basketball game, but it's at halftime, and but the soccer match just started, and so you can kind of flip between them there. There are applications for that. I'm sure there are people with horrible betting problems for whom this is the perfect feature too, but I can say not just that.
Like watching someone play Tetris, you don't really need to hear. You could watch 4 different games and see 4 different interesting methods of playing. You don't need to hear the Tetris music. I mean, you only need to hear one instance of the Tetris music.
If you think about football, I mean, they have the concept of the Red Zone channel where a professional producer does it for you, but you could also bring up 3 or 4 games that you're interested in, whether it's for loving football or for fantasy sports or for betting. And then when the team that you're interested in has the ball, then you flip over there. And then you put there's a real zoom in, zoom out approach to this interface that I think is kind of fun, where you can have all 4 up and choose which audio to pick among them, and that audio plays, and you can kind of switch among them. But then if you're really interested, you click on the one you've got selected and it zooms in, and now you're seeing it full screen, and then you click the back button and it zooms back out to the 4 box. It's fun. I love it. I think it's a really fun feature for limited use. It's not for everybody or every moment, but it's like we live in this world where we've got multiple video streams. The Apple TV is capable of it, right? It's perfectly capable of it. And yet it doesn't do it. And it's like, or each app does it, but they don't talk to each other. It's so frustrating. So
it's almost like they need a split screen to bring split screen or split view from the iPad over, and just hey, let me put multiple apps in here, and then do the multi-app support that they did a few years ago, so that I can put the MLB app side by side, multiple instances of it, but watching 2 different games.
Yeah, I mean, there is a problem. I mean, some people are going to say, well, but they do have picture-in-picture. I will tell you, as somebody who's tried to use it,
it's not.
If you try to use it in one app, like the MLB app, it will work. It's not a great interface, but it'll work. If you try to use it across multiple apps, sometimes it sort of works for a while, and other times it doesn't work at all ever. It's not good enough, right? Yeah. So whether it's literally, can I just put an app in each corner, or if it's, can I just take the video streams that the system knows are there and put them in the corners and let me watch what I want to watch? It would be nice. It sure would be nice.
Yeah. I'm so used to watching stuff that is, it's scripted, it's some sort of interesting, you only want to watch that. And so I actually, outside of the jokes about sports ball and blah, 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 it was very helpful because I just had not considered the fact that, yes, you could be watching 4 different games and get value from that, and then zoom in on the one that is of the most interest to you. It just wasn't something that I'd thought about before.
And there are certain sports where multiple views are available, where you could have the ability to have right now, like ESPN does that, where on big sporting events, they'll have a couple different commentary tracks, and then they'll have an overhead view of the whole field versus the zoomed in. And so there are other applications for this where you might want to listen to the game, but see it from a couple different angles at once. That might be a way to do it. Or for golf, a few different holes at once. Or for tennis, you're back to a few different courts at a big tennis tournament that you can go back and forth between. So it's not going to be great for your reality TV show or your prestige drama. I don't really recommend that, Citizen Kane's in the top left corner and Treasure of the Sierra Madre in the top right. And, I don't recommend that. Don't do that.
It's enough that to just give people the feature and let them make of it what they want to. There have been times where the Boston Marathon was yesterday, and people, it's not boring. I'm not going to say it's boring. It's amazing achievement, but the coverage is just going to be, and here's another shot of people running, and people are still running. hey, here are some other people running. Oh, now some of them are a little bit more wet than they were a half hour ago. I mean, it's exciting, but it's not something it's something you want to keep an eye on, but not necessarily something that you want to watch 24, the entire thing. And so the ability to have one of those in a corner while I'm actually watching something else or in a news channel, that's pretty cool. And also, let's not forget that as cool as our 4K TVs are, we very rarely stream anything that's actually 4K. So if you think of it as 4 HD displays, then that 4 HD TVs that are basically in a nice frame in your living room, that does give you a lot of opportunities, whether it is an actual app that is just simply keeping an eye on the classic widget would be stock market, but if you're, I think the keeping an eye on stocks is like the phone app / widget equivalent of like balancing your checkbook when they tried to sell people home computers in 1978, saying, yep. Okay, that convinces you there's a business reason for this, not that you're actually going to do it, but you know what I mean. It gives you a way to actually take advantage of a 4K display in a meaningful way, and the person who decides to use that feature, when they use it, they don't have to explain it or justify it to anybody, because that in that moment when you're watching the Oscars, because you just want to see if something awful happens while you're actually watching like a movie or binge watching a series that you actually want to take a look at. And have other information on the screen, that's good enough. Just give us the features. Let us figure out how to use it. Oftentimes, you don't necessarily have to push a use case in front of us.
All right. I do need to take a quick break before we come back with loads more to talk about here on MacBreak Weekly. But let's pause to talk about Cisco Meraki, who are bringing you this episode of MacBreak Weekly. Cisco Meraki are the experts in cloud-based networking for hybrid work. So whether your employees are working at home or working at a cabin in the mountains, on a lounge chair at the beach while watching 4 different streams of baseball or Tetris, a cloud-managed network provides the same exceptional work experience no matter where they happen to be. You know what? If you were thinking that hybrid work was leaving, it's not. So just go ahead and roll out the welcome mat. Go ahead and say, hey, come sit at my table, because hybrid work is here to stay. Hybrid work works best in the cloud, though, because with it being in the cloud, there are perks for both employees and leaders. Workers can move faster and deliver better results with a cloud-managed network, while leaders can actually automate distributed operations. They can build more sustainable workspaces and proactively protect the network. Meraki had IDG Market Pulse Research conduct a report and looked at the highlights of top-tier opportunities in supporting hybrid work. For one thing, hybrid work does have some challenges. The IDG report talked about the red flag that is security. 48% of leaders report cybersecurity threats as a primary obstacle to improving workforce experiences. Always-on security monitoring is part of what makes the cloud-managed network so awesome. And then hybrid work is a priority for 78% of C-suite executives. So leaders actually want to drive collaboration forward while staying on top of boosting productivity and security. And your IT team can rest easy because they will be able to use apps from Meraki's vast ecosystem of partners. These will work seamlessly with the Meraki cloud platform to provide asset tracking, location analytics, and even more. One example is reserving workspaces. So the system can look at vacancy and employee profiles, and then through a process called hot desking, it allows employees to scout out a specific spot, and then locations in restricted environments can be booked in advance, and they can also have time-based door access. There's a big one, though, MDM, mobile device management. Integrating devices and systems allow IT to manage, update, and troubleshoot company-owned devices, even when the device and the employee are in a remote location. So go ahead and turn any space into a place of productivity and empower your organization with the same exceptional experience no matter where they work with Meraki and the Cisco suite of technology. Learn how your organization can make hybrid work work. Visit meraki.cisco.com/twit. And thank you, Cisco Meraki, for sponsoring this week's episode of Mac Break Weekly. We have talked in the past on this show, and I've talked on several shows about how over time, GM and Rivian have both either doubled down on or officially announced, if it's their sort of first time, that they are no longer going to be supporting Apple CarPlay and Google's Android Auto. That in the future, their own individual sort of integration, so mobile integration services in the car, the entertainment system, and even displaying meters and gauges would all be coming directly from those companies, or they would be using, in the case of GM, a Google created system. But while that was going on, and while we saw all this backlash play out, Ford took the opportunity to say, hey, you know what we're doing? We're going to commit to continuing to use Android Auto and CarPlay, which I think was a smart thing to do, because we have seen several, or not even just several, but lots and lots of backlash, at least I have, regarding the idea that CarPlay or Android Auto was not going to be available in future versions of these vehicles. And I think this is the first time in a long, long time that I've gotten so many tweets and emails and all these other things of people saying, quite literally, their decision for their next car was based on whether they would be able to use their what we call projection system of choice, because essentially it is the mobile device projecting the entertainment center into whatever the car provides. So yeah, I don't know how things have been going for you all in terms of what you've seen out there, but do we think this is a pretty smart decision from Ford to say, look, we're doing it. We're going to keep doing it.
Big time. I no joke. When we hang up this call, I am going to go test drive a car because my poor car. I'm so bummed about this. My car is dying on me.
Oh no!
I was hoping it was going to make it to the next version of CarPlay when it just takes over everything, but it literally is dying on me right now. So when we hang up on this, I'm going to go test drive a car. I'm kind of been looking at a few different options in my head. I'm like, kind of want to pick up. Like I just want to. It's a long story. Anyways, so I was looking at Rivian, and then I saw, oh no, CarPlay out. I will not buy a car without CarPlay. I want I want the option. I want the ability to use what I want. I want the ability to use the apps that I use with CarPlay, with that interface, not have to just do a Bluetooth connection over to the auto manufacturer's interface. And I mean, the car that I have right now, it's a Toyota Corolla. It's fine. It's fine. But I drove my brother's truck the other day, and he has wireless CarPlay, and I set my phone up to it, and I was like, this is so nice. Mm-hmm. This is just like, there's maps right there. I can open music. I can open Overcast, whatever I want. It's right there. So basically, I have trimmed my list down of potential cars that I will be buying to only, I literally checked Apple's website to be like, okay, is this a car that supports CarPlay? Yes. Okay, so that's on the list. And then deleted all the other ones that aren't that.
Yeah, there's a word that John Oliver came up with on the old Bugle podcast about how the word is disastratunity, and I think that this is Ford being really, really smart. It's like, gee, GM's getting a lot of backlash. They've made a lot of people very, very angry. Let's take advantage of the disastratunity to remind people that, hey, we will let you choose whatever you want. Not that the GM decision is necessarily going to prove to be disastrous for them. Like we said when we talked about this a couple of weeks ago, it really is all about, there's a lot of money that goes through that comes with control of that center dash, and GM doesn't want to let that go to Apple or Google. But I think we are going to see how this new version of the headphone jack wars plays out. Is it actually going to be something that makes people switch from GM to Ford, or is it something where people won't like it, but they're not going to change their entire buying decision based on this thing? We've seen a lot of kickback about it so far, but we've yet to see if they'll turn into actual sales.
Yeah, I'm a little okay. I don't want to be the wet blanket here, but I'll say this as a veteran viewer of press commentary. I looked at this statement as being the exact statement you make, where it's CarPlay remains a product in our lineup.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how forceful they are about like, we shall march into a glorious future with Apple and CarPlay. It's more like, no, we have a good relationship with Apple and CarPlay's in our cars. I think people who are looking for the counter to GM have maybe read a little bit more forcefulness into this statement that like, I don't think there's anything in here that if Ford decided in a year to announce that they were going to dump CarPlay and Android Auto, that we would be able to point to this statement and say, but you promised, right? It seems very much like we continue to have, until the moment that we don't, a relationship with Apple. I think the big question is how many people are going to care? Because that's GM's bet. GM's bet is, although 79% of new car buyers say that CarPlay matters to them, GM thinks that that's soft. GM thinks that if they are in the showroom and they're looking at that amazing Chevy, that they're going to be like, I don't even care about CarPlay anymore. And that is a gamble. But I think that they've decided the revenue opportunity and the data opportunity is just too great for them, and the control opportunity and all of that. And I mean, we'll see. I would like to believe that some savvy companies like Ford are going to like take the opposite opinion and basically be like, this is a way for us to differentiate ourselves from our competition, so we're going to stick with it. What I hope doesn't happen is a stampede in the other direction, which is like, finally, we can all just kick these phones out of our cars. Because the truth is, if they do, what's going to end up happening is that somebody's going to sell a lot of cup holder mounts and vent mounts for people's phones, because people aren't going to give up their phones, and their phones are still going to be the most important thing in their lives. And the car makers are kidding themselves if they think that's not going to continue to be the case.
Yeah, I think that if anything, these other car makers are basically doubling down on, we're not going to do a press release about how we're going to kick these out.
It didn't go well.
We're just going to stop offering them and pretty much be sure that most people aren't going to notice. Oh, I'm sure there's going to be like an Apple-oriented podcast or two that's going to raise a stink. But again, we throw in some air fresheners, throw in free sport package trim. I think we can get out of this pretty fine.
All right. Moving right along. This time, it's a story that is not a rumor, but is actually underway. So we had heard that Apple, along with the introduction of the HomePod second generation and the HomePod Mini, was going to roll out the ability for these devices to alert you should a smoke alarm go off or smoke alarm or carbon monoxide alarm go off in your home. And so with this, essentially, it works a lot like it does on the iPhone. If you go into the accessibility settings of your iPhone, there is a sound recognition feature that, upon enabling it, will give the iPhone the ability to notify you when it hears certain sounds that are categorized. So you can turn it on and have the phone sort of listen to the surrounding for baby crying, for the sound of certain appliances running. And in the case of smoke alarm going off, then it can also alert you to that. But the great thing about this feature for HomePod, and why I think it makes the most sense here, is because this means that while you're out of the home, if the HomePod or the HomePod Mini detect that sound, which it's all but standard as far as the actual sound of a smoke alarm goes, then it will notify you no matter where you happen to be. And it was just the other day I came home and I had that thought of, if I was gone and the smoke alarms were going, I wouldn't even know about it. So I'm really glad that this feature is rolling out. There has long been the option of getting smart smoke alarms, but I think I've seen more awful videos of smart smoke alarms not working as they're supposed to than like any other smart home category. Just person after person having to go around with a broom and trying to get their smart smoke alarms that are all networked together to turn off. I've seen so many of those videos. So I've never really dipped into that category before. And I'm glad now that this can kind of be, it's just a secondary thing. If you've got these HomePods plugged in, you can turn on the feature, and then they'll just be, along with listening for that trigger phrase of, hey, you know who, then they will also work to notify you if you're out of the home and that sound takes place. Now, it's unclear precisely or exactly where this feature is going to show up. Some press got a notification saying that, yes, this feature was rolling out today. I've been checking the Home app throughout the day and specifically looking into the HomePods that support it. And I still do not see a feature or an option to turn this on. So I will be keeping an eye on it. But what do we think of these sort of passive features in the devices that we may have at home that are already plugged in?
It's brilliant. It's absolutely like they're there. They're plugged in all the time. Do something with them if they can do it. Absolutely do it. I'm a Worrier. Like I'm somebody that kind of like, okay, I'm going out of town for a week. Is everything going to be okay? Is my house going to get burnt down? Something like that. Like I actually worry about that kind of stuff.
Oh, Worrier. I thought you said a warrior.
No.
Waiting for you to talk about taking up an axe.
No, I'm not a Klingon. Not a Klingon.
Okay, gotcha.
Sorry. But yes, I'm not going to even try and say it now. Anyways, so I would love for like, I'm going to definitely enable this feature right away just because like, hey, if I'm gone and the smoke alarm's going off or the carbon monoxide alarm's going off, that's something you kind of want to know about. That's not something you want to come back after a week-long vacation to find out, oh, hey, your house is gone. Like, so yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. It's especially because there's some things that it seems like it's not a complicated problem, like being able to tick a box and say, if you hear a dog barking, let me know, give me an alert. If you hear sirens outside, let me know. If you hear smoke alarms, these aren't the sort of things where you have to make sure, oh gosh, do I have the right Zigbee protocol installed on the smoke alarm? No, if you hear a beep 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 beep, evacuate the building. Beep 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 beep. Perhaps there's something that as you're picking up your Dunkin' Donuts would make you want to speed back home and see what's going on. And the problem with a lot of these smart home features is that they're not terribly smart, and they aren't. You have such a dopamine rush when you first install them, and you're able to turn lights on and off just by talking to a smart speaker, and other simple things like adjusting heat and cooling depending on the time of day, depending on the occupancy. And then there's so much processing power, just as you say, if these things are on all the time, if they're going to be drawing power and being connected to the internet all the time, if you got time to lean, you got time to clean, smart speaker. Figure out ways to make me value this purchase more and more, because even it's not just limited to Apple. The Amazon smart speakers, Google smart speakers have the same thing. You plateau at a certain point, and they're fine. They become part of the background. They become appliances when you really do think that there's a whole bunch of potential that's just not being tapped.
Yeah, it's good accessibility. It's good for remote. I love the idea that they're already there. This is sound matching. That's all pretty smart. And also, I will say to Chris, there is no honor in being a Worrier. That's my Klingon. That's what I got.
I appreciate that. I don't know why I can't just say Worrier. Whatever.
It's okay.
I'm not going to even try. Can't say
I'm going to blame it on the audio being passed through multiple sound streams.
Yep,
and
that's it.
It's all Zoom's fault.
Yes,
that's right. It's MPEG compression. Fine. It takes those vowels and does weird things to them.
Material. It is a Warrior's home efficiency protocol.
It is a good day to podcast.
There you go.
I am Siri, son of Alexa, conqueror of the Google Assistant.
Tell me what you would like to do, or prepare to die.
Kapla.
I noticed there's a paint stick on the network. Would you like to set it up with Apple Home? Apple Home can control the level of intensity and the level of pulses, back from retribution to a simple reminder that you are the commander and they are the subservient.
My forehead is growing ridges. We need to move on, though. That's just stress. It's not a Klingon forehead. Let's talk about a rumor based on a patent, which is everybody's favorite topic because none of it means anything. But I am always game to talk about a future in which our screens are not relegated to these tiny little frames and instead could be projected onto surfaces, or in the case of augmented reality, augmented onto a virtual space. Patently Apple, which is the site for covering the sort of rumors based on patents category, talks about a patent that Apple won for an iMac that has multiple projectors that could put stuff that's on your desktop onto your wall and onto your actual physical desktop. So it would have sensors like gaze detection sensors, three-dimensional image sensors, cameras, and other components that would work to sort of look at how you are looking at the screen and what it has around it, and then actually project into other areas. It says that it could use projectors to display images onto nearby surfaces. And then, and I've lost the part that was of importance. So it could almost kind of extend the display is what it's getting at. So I guess I am curious to hear, is this more of the sort of stopgap between a true future where any surface or even any space in front of us can become a screen? Or do we think that's so far out that they do need to have this sort of middle distance where we have a screen that can kind of get bigger as it needs to by projecting onto the wall around the desktop that you have?
Gee, I don't know. I'm looking at the patent, and it's so broad and speculative that I'm keen to wonder if it's just we need to have a patent on creating a control surface, that a virtual control surface on a real life object. It could be something that works with that would work with the reality headset. It could even be something as simple as, what if we have a projector that could, like we've been talking before, can create a control surface on the desk next to your mouse. So it's not augmented reality or anything like that. But if you want to put if Photoshop wants to put a control deck on your desk, it could do that. And as always, this is always the let's get high and stroke our beards, because anytime where it's a patent filing, it could just be, you know what, this is by virtue of the fact that this is a patentable idea, we are going to patent it. We have a patent. We have patent lawyers. We have a patent department that does nothing but patent stuff. So yes, just click as in your docs, shared docs folder on the Apple campus. There's a checkbox that says should this document be examined for patentability, and then if it does, then they file for a patent, and then 3 or 4 months later, people like us are saying, but what companies like Samsung don't understand is that the banana is inherently an organic object as a handset, and the possibilities of dude, it was a joke. I had my friend in the patent office. I said, what if we actually did that? And then he had nothing to do that day, and he needed some billable hours, and dude, calm down. We're not doing a banana phone.
Have you ever really looked at your hand, and if something was projected on your hand and your gaze detection saw that you were looking at your hand, could you use that as an extension of your desktop? Man.
Oh my God, what's the address of your Kickstarter right now? I'm funding at the platinum t-shirt level.
I could really do with some Cheetos right now, brother.
I mean, if we're going full theoretical at this point, so I have a 14-inch MacBook Pro. I love that size for travel. 16 inches is really big, but if I was sitting there and editing a video, a 14-inch screen is kind of small. So being able to virtually extend the display, whether that's through a headset or a projector or something, would be kind of cool. But I mean, it's a patent. It's not happening. It's not going to be something that shows up at WWDC. No. Maybe on somebody holding a sandwich board outside. Yeah.
Not in.
The sky is falling, and there are projections.
12 galaxies projecting interfaces onto the wall. Yeah.
I live on the wrong coast for this kind of a joke, but I am encouraging anybody who lives in the San Jose area, build this. leave it behind in a coffee shop, wait 2 weeks, and then desperately call the owners to say, did you get there was a weird sort of thing with some lenses on it and a logo that was covered in anything like that. Also, a glove, and the computer that might.
Also, a robot spider. Did you see the robot spider, or did it? It may be in your air.
It didn't replicate, right? I think
no problem. No problem. You're fine. Let me put it this way: if it's been 2 weeks, you really have nothing to do, right?
If it were operating, you would have seen them by now, right? If it were operating effectively, they would have taken over your store by now. So probably they broke.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's good. It's good. All right. Moving along to something that is real and is not just, I don't know, bloviation. TechCrunch has reported, I don't even know if that's a real word, but it just came to me.
It is. And like then you said TechCrunch. So we'll see. I'll be the judge of this. Is it bloviation?
So TechCrunch has a report out about Apple's high security mode successfully blocking some NSO spyware. So this was actually from a report from Citizen Lab, but this is a TechCrunch report talking about that report from Citizen Lab. And basically they looked at some 3 zero-day exploits in iOS 15 and iOS 16 and looked at the spyware from the NSO group. And while the special lockdown mode that you can turn on your iOS device was enabled, it was unable, the software, the spyware, was unable to actually get in and do what it had intended to do. So I think this is pretty cool that we do have a sort of a real world example of how lockdown mode can be helpful, but then also seeing this sort of big name in the spyware game being hampered by lockdown mode. And it makes sense, Apple put out the security check first and then the full-on lockdown mode as 2 options. And I don't know. I mean, I could see, I guess, of the 3 of you, well, I don't know. We do have the big Worrier on the line. So maybe Christopher does have lockdown mode turned on. I was going to say, have any of you tried turning on lockdown mode just to see how it impacts your device? I have not, because I don't want to to deal with that.
Yeah, I turned it on to test it, and yeah, you have to. The reasons for turning it on would be such that you're not even going to question all the disabilities that you're going to have with your phone. It's like, this could very well keep me alive. It's okay to have essentially a 1999 flip phone. It really is tied up. There's very little that actual do. It basically puts you down into survival rations in terms of digital contact. But as the Citizen Lab report talks about, the people who need lockdown mode are the people who very much the people who are installing spyware on their phones are doing so not just to get an inside track on anything. It's because we want to be able to kill this person, find them and kill them whenever we actually need to, and whenever we collect the evidence that will promote us to actually do that. They actually found some of this malware on the phones of some activists in Mexico, where again people with that kind of power can disappear you in a right hurry. And the other part of the story is that if you did not have lockdown mode turned on, they did find there was a 0-day two-way exploit that exploited HomeKit and iMessage in tandem to essentially own pretty much any modern phone. It wasn't like an old phone that had been in a drawer and had been updated in 3 or 4 years. So the struggle is ongoing, and everybody who is in a position where even people like us who are like practicing journalism in a fairly safe location, the fact that we are communicating with people who may not be in safe locations means that this lockdown mode is very, very important, because if you protect your own phone, you're protecting other people's lives as well. Mm-hmm. Good for Apple. Good to have this. That not only was it blocked, but it was also identified, saying, "Hey, look, your phone is being attacked right now. You might want to forensic your phone right now to find out exactly what's going on."
Yeah, back in my IT days, I didn't have anything super serious, but I did work for a fairly large insurance company here in California, and we had some higher ups that had access to a lot of information, and we're not technology savvy, and they would click on things all the time.
Oh.
And for their phones, they just used them as old school phones. Phone calls, text messages, maybe maps here and there. So I absolutely, if I was still in that position now, I absolutely would enable lockdown mode on their phones. And I honestly do not think they would know a difference. I don't think they would know the difference because I had many sleepless nights at that job because of people trying to get in. And I just had all these people that I tried to teach, hey, when you get this weird looking email, don't click the link. The very basics, but they still click the link. So yeah, lockdown mode, it's a nice thing. Super happy that it's there. It's not for me. Luckily, it's not for me. It's not something I need. But I am glad it's there for the people that need it.
All righty. I think it's time for us to take another quick break, and then we will come back with our MacBreak Weekly Picks of the Week. I do want to tell you about Miro, who are bringing you this episode of MacBreak Weekly. Miro is awesome. You got to check out Miro. I want to ask you a question. Are you and your team still going from tab to tab, from tool to tool, and in the process of all of that context switching, losing brilliant ideas and important information along the way? Probably. But with Miro, that doesn't need to happen, because Miro is the collaborative visual whiteboard that brings all of your great work together no matter where you are. Whether you're working from home or in a hybrid workspace, everything comes together in one place online. Creating that one great product needs input from everyone. That is where Miro comes in with its capabilities to democratize collaboration and input. Miro's infinite collaborative whiteboard gives product teams a perpetual space where they can simply drag and drop data so nothing is lost or forgotten. All of that information is right there. Miro covers a breadth of use cases so users can build visual assets, present findings, and run brainstorms with cross-functional teams. You can build out your product vision on a Miro board by brainstorming with sticky notes, comments, live reactions, a voting tool, and even a timer to make sure you come to a consensus quickly. Express yourself in creative ways and bring the whole group together around one idea. It could happen with a quick wireframe, drawing with the pen tool, putting images and mock-ups on the Miro board. Leo and I have used Miro on Ask the Tech Guys because it's so nice to, we've got all of these different tools that we use to collect links and find our the emails that folks send in to ask us questions and the tweet. And to have that all on one spot where I can just see this all in one board, everything that I need for a specific episode, all right there, makes it so much easier than trying to remember when I'm switching from one app to another. Oh, what was it that I was looking for again? I don't remember. No, Miro is going to let you just have everything all right there. It's it reminds me of my messy desktop, but in the best way, because everything that I need is right here. I can grab it, I can use it, and I can move on whenever I'm ready to. Miro users report saving up to 80 hours per user per year by streamlining conversations and cutting down meetings. No more meetings with Miro. As a result, Miro gives your team the chance to always stay connected to real-time information, and it gives project managers and product leads a bird's eye view of the whole project to ensure nothing slips through the cracks. So be a part of more than 1 million users who join Miro every month. Get your first 3 boards for free to start working better at Miro.com/podcast. That's Miro.com/podcast. Seriously, if you're listening to this, just go there. It's a very short URL, Miro.com/podcast. So it won't take you too much finger calories to be able to type that in, and just check it out. Even if you're just using it by yourself, it's so much fun to have this one whiteboard where I can just add everything I need to. And there are all of these great plugins as well. You can embed content and just that sort of quote unquote one source of truth. It's so nice. Miro.com/podcast. Head there. Seriously, check it out. And thank you, Miro, for sponsoring this week's episode of MacBreak Weekly. All right, we are back from the break. You are listening to Micah Sargent subbing in for Leo Laporte. We've got Andy Anatko, Jason Snell, and Christopher Lawley, a special guest panelist here with us this week. And it is time for the picks of the week. This is the part of the show where everyone shares an item, an app, a service, something that they think is great and want all of you to know about. So we will start with our special guest, Christopher Lawley. What is your MBW pick?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite devices, products, whatever, in my backpack. It is the Anker 747 charger. It's a GAN charger, but it's a 150 watt charger. So this will charge a laptop to a phone. Like, it charges everything. But specifically, it has 3 USB-C ports and a USB-A port. So this is the only charger I keep in my backpack. This is it. I don't bring the MacBook Pro charger. I don't bring my iPad charger. I don't bring... This is the only charging brick. And I absolutely love this thing. So when I'm in a hotel, I can charge up my iPhone, Apple Watch, AirPods overnight. If I'm working someplace, I can charge up my MacBook. This thing is absolutely fantastic. It's a little bit on the pricey side. It goes on sale quite a bit, so it's usually somewhere around $100. But I absolutely love it. It's funny. We did a family trip to Disneyland. My brother and my dad saw I was using that. They had a bunch of different bricks, and they immediately ordered one right then and there. So it's just really convenient. I'm somebody that always has a lot of stuff in my backpack because I have camera gear and lenses and laptops and stuff like that. So I want to keep the weight of my backpack down as much as possible, and only having one charging brick really helps with that.
Nice. Yes, this is a great recommendation too for checking out Camel. It is spelled how it sounds, 3 camels. If you go to Camel and you pop in the link for that Anker charger, then you will be notified when there are sales on that. And they do go on sale quite frequently, so you can end up saving some money. But yes, I also have one of those Anker chargers, and they are fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. All right. Let's see. Let's go to Andy Anatko next.
Oh, I got a great one this week. I am a huge fan of Adobe Lightroom. It is the reason why I really don't have any games on my phone is because I have Adobe Lightroom, and because if I've got like 20 minutes, I'm waiting for a train or something. It doesn't even matter if it's a photo that I took today. I might find, oh wow, that's right, I went to the Met Opera like last October, and there's a whole bunch of pictures I didn't edit. And we're not talking about pushing sliders for brightness, contrast. It's like the amount of control you have over the final result. And you find, and just like with a game, I just get into this mode where it's like, oh, I want a little bit more detail in the eyes. Can I bring out, okay, now let's change the color grading like this, and with the idea that, oh well, of course when I get home, of course it's all synced to my Adobe Cloud, so I can use Photoshop or the desktop version of Lightroom. But oftentimes, like, no, actually, I'll open it up in the desktop version or on my iPad. Like, no, actually, on my little phone, I actually got almost exactly where I wanted to go. And they did switch to a subscription model. It is $10 a month with 1 terabyte of storage. But the thing is, Adobe's been paying off. I've had this for like almost since the subscription model started, and just keeps getting better and better and better. And today they dropped a huge update. They added one thing that's really simple to explain: AI-based noise reduction, so that with my not great camera, when you push it to high ISOs, obviously there's a lot of noise there, and it's always had a really good denoise function. But now it's AI-based, so it's much better. It's one of the reasons why when I selected this camera, I had a choice between this camera that I really wanted, this Olympus Micro Four Thirds, or the Sony like full frame or whatever, but I didn't really like it. My bet was that in the coming couple of years, AI-based denoise is going to be good enough that the ISO is not going to matter. And now it absolutely doesn't matter. But the really cool thing, like the absolute like blow your socks off demo, they added selections a couple of years ago, and they started off with, okay, now I can basically draw an oval or use a pencil or whatever to select something, and things will only adjustments will only apply to this. More recently, they made more specific AI-based selections where select the subject of the photo, select just the sky, stuff like that. Now they've done it. So let me just quickly walk you through this. I opened up, I only got it like a couple hours ago, And so I opened up this picture from this curtain call at the Met. There are 3 people on stage, the tenor who's taking his bow, and a couple of supporting players who are like just behind it. So I said, okay, like select a mask automatically. So, I want to select the subject, figuring that it would maybe be smart enough to figure out that the guy in the center is the subject. No, it said, I identify 3 people. Do you want to select this guy, or this guy? And as you hover your mouse over it, these individual people, like you see, like they're outlined in red to show what you're selecting. So it's like, no, I want person 1. I want this guy. And then it explains, okay, do you want the entire person, or do you want just the facial skin, just the body skin? Meaning in this case, it's the neck, the hands, and the arms. Do you want just the eyebrows, just the eye sclera, like the whites of the eye, just the iris and pupil, just the lips, just the hair, just the clothes, just the facial hair? And these are all check boxes. So I can say, I'm having problems with highlights like on his forehead and on his cheek. So just give me this facial skin. But I could simply say, I think there's more color that I can get out of like his eyebrows, his mustache, and his hair. So click, click, click. And now instead of having to mask all those things, boom, they're selected. And of course I can modify those if I want to, but just out of the box, it is bang on. And this is the desktop version. I just checked like the mobile version. So obviously this kind of power isn't in the mobile version, but oh my goodness. The stuff that you can do without even having to go into Photoshop, without having to be particularly intelligent about it, is just, this is one of those wow moments that makes me forget that I've spent probably $380 on this app over the past like 3 or 4 years. Because oh boy, does it justify it. Every time you have a photo that you know that you can make more of it, or my goodness, that this is good but can be great. Now the through line from what your phone took or what your camera took to the thing that you're posting on Instagram, or the thing that you're printing out and hanging on the wall and that you hope will be there. Like, well, when you're pulled out of your house feet first for the last time, your kid's going to want that sofa picture. That's such a linear progression right now. Really, really happy for it. It's $10. It's $10 a month. For $10 a month, you get the desktop version and the phone version. If you go for $20 a month, you also get the iPad version. You get the Photoshop. You get the full Photoshop, and you get a whole bunch of other things too. I subscribe to the Photoshop plus Lightroom edition. And again, I was skeptical at first, but oh boy, it's like Christmas every 2 or 3 months when they add enhancements of this scale to it. I'm very, very happy.
That is awesome. I didn't realize that it has become that full featured.
Yeah.
All right, let us go to Jason Snell.
I got a conceptual pick this time, which is I'm picking the screenshot utility that's already built into Mac OS, because I keep getting asked what screenshot utility should I use, because I need to take a lot of screenshots for work, for documentation, for whatever it is. And my answer is always, well, and there are reasons, right? But what are you missing that's built into Mac OS? And I just want to detail some things here in case you don't know. Command-Shift-3 takes a picture of your screen or screens and saves it to a folder. Okay. Command-Shift-5, if you don't know, a few years ago was introduced. Command-Shift-5 brings up a whole floating display that lets you pick, do you want to do a selection? Do you want to do the whole screen? Do you want to do a screen recording? Also very helpful. If you haven't done that, you can set a timer, you can pick what folder you want to save your screenshots to. It's very helpful, and it's built right in. And then this is also useful, by the way, if you want to take a screenshot of you writing a note in Apple Notes apologizing for something on social media. I love that use for it. But here's what I wanted to say about the things you don't know. So Command-Shift-4 lets you by default select something. It actually gives you a crosshair, and you can drag a selection and screenshot just that selection. But it gets better. If you do Command-Shift-4 and then press the space bar, you get a little camera icon, and you can pick a single window and screenshot it, which is very convenient. But it gets better. If you do that, any of these screenshot commands, and you hold down the Option key, it doesn't grab the drop shadow on that screenshot, because sometimes it can be, you take a screenshot of a window and you're like, well, why is it so huge? And the answer is there's this giant shadow that OS X has always, since the very beginning, put behind it, and it makes the window huge when it should be small. And then let me tell you the one screenshot shortcut that will change your life, because it changed mine, which is if you've ever been in that thing where you're like, oh, I should share this in Slack. I'll take a screenshot of it and then switch to Finder and go to the screenshot folder and find the file by sorting by date. And then I'm going to drag it, and where's the Slack window? And oh, there it is. And here it is in the Slack window. And now I'm going to upload it and share it with my friend or in an iMessage or whatever. Command Shift 4, hold down the control key while you take the screenshot. And you know what happens? It doesn't save your screenshot to disk. It puts it on the clipboard. And then you just switch to Slack or iMessage or wherever, or Word or Google Docs, and just do Command V and paste it in. No garbage on your hard drive, nothing to worry about. It works with all the other shortcuts. And that's the one that changed my life. I think it'll change yours. Hold down the control key while you take the screenshot, and you don't have to do any file management. It's not necessary. And in fact, if you decide, oh, I want to view this, did you know that the Preview app, another fine piece of software that's built into every Mac, if you've got an image on the clipboard and you open Preview and do Command N, it takes the clipboard and just makes a new image with the contents of the clipboard, because it knows that that's what you probably want to do. So anyway, lots of reasons to use screenshot utilities that add features. But let me tell you, the basic thing is the stuff that's built into your Mac does a lot. It's really worth learning those little keyboard shortcuts, especially holding down the control key to put it on the clipboard.
Don't you love these features inside the OS where there's not a shred of doubt in your mind that this is a case of Apple's own developers solving their own problems? And maybe not telling the product, the manager about it, that way they put in this wonderful extra feature that saves time for them, and incidentally will also help the users.
Yeah, it's true.
Quite nice.
Yeah, control key. Just remember that one. If nothing else sticks with you from this spiel, just think about that, because how many times do you take a screenshot and then go find it and then drag it somewhere and then delete it, right? Like, you don't need to do that. Stop it. Don't do it. Put it on your clipboard. It's like reduce, reuse, recycle for a screenshot.
Nice. All right. To round things out, my pick of the week is a retro skin from Slick Wraps. Rosemary Orchard recently joined me. Well, actually, she was on MacBreak Weekly last week, but was here in person in the studio. And she had talked about Slick Wraps. They're these sort of vinyl coverings for different devices. And they make a really cool retro skin for the Mac. Well, they make it for a lot of different devices. So you can get a version of this for your Mac, for iPad, all sorts of Apple stuff. I've got one for the Apple Pencil. I have not been brave enough to put it on yet because it's a little bit more involved. But this is the top of my MacBook Air, and this is the bottom of my MacBook Air. And this is the blue MacBook Air. So it is the fingerprint magnet. And that I got over that quickly, but it is kind of nice now that it has this really cool sort of yellow white cover on it that will not show fingerprints. And then you can get it in different pieces. So you can just get the top and the bottom, but they also make a spot internally that you can apply as well. And it has the Apple logo there in the corner. And it's just a fun little way to customize your Mac a little bit if you'd like. As I said, they have this for your iPhone, iPads. They make them for the cases as well. So Rosemary has one on her keyboard case for the iPad. And so she was able to quickly distinguish between mine and hers, because we both obviously were using iPads for iOS today. And once she brought that in, I thought, oh, I've got to have one of those. And I ordered them. They come very quickly, and they've got a great policy called the Goof policy, where if you mess up, then as long as it's within 30 days of your order, they will send you a new one to apply with, the suggestions for how to do it the right way if you happen to mess up. So it's a bit of an investment, but it's a good investment in the end because you know that you've got that to kind of pad you if you mess up. And they're really well priced. The retro skin I mentioned is currently $23 or about $23. And so if you're looking for a way to maybe add a little bit of protection to your device or to not have those fingerprints all over everything, you might check it out. They also make custom, so you can choose to put photos or maybe a design. And then they also have this really cool, for a lot of the phones, they have this sort of see-through version where it will show you the chips inside of, it's called iWrap. And so it will show you what it looks like inside of your phone, which I think is kind of cool as well. So those are a couple of options for you to check out. And those all come from Slick Wraps. So yes, consider checking that out. And now is the time where I say a lot of things because this is the end of the episode. If you would like to tune in to watch the show live, you should head to twit.tv/live every Tuesday around about 11 a.m. Pacific time or so. There you will be able to watch the show on many a streaming platform. We have a bunch available. So whether it's Twitch or it's YouTube Live or in other places, we're streaming all of those places. And then we think that, of course, the best way to get the show is by subscribing to the show. You do that by going to twit.tv/MBW. That's MacBreak Weekly. From there, you will see two buttons you can click: subscribe to audio or subscribe to video. So you can choose the video version of the show or the audio version of the show. And we have a bunch of different platforms listed. Of course, also just the straight up RSS link. So Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, and many more to make sure that you are able to get the show as soon as it's available and edited and put together so nicely after we have recorded. Let's see what else. Club Twit. Consider joining the club at twit.tv/clubtwit. When you join the club, starting at $7 a month or $84 a year, you will not only be supporting us and making sure that we can continue to do these shows and bring them to you, but you also get every single Twitch show with no ads because you, in effect, are sponsoring the show. So all of the content, no ads, and you also get access to the Twit Plus bonus feed that has extra stuff you won't find anywhere else, behind the scenes, before the show, after the show. Special events will all get published there, and access to the members-only Discord server, a fun place to go to chat with your fellow Club Twit members and also those of us here at Twit. My co-host on iOS Today, Rosemary Orchard, is an incredibly active member of the Club Twit Discord, always responding to folks and lots of great stuff there. So consider joining the club. I say starting at $7 a month because we did give people the option. Some folks said, hey, I'd like to give you more than $7 a month. So we enabled that feature. And I think that's because we continue to try to make the club more valuable. Over time, we have added more stuff to the club, including the Untitled Linux Show, which is a show all about Linux. Paul Thurrott's Hands on Windows program, which is a short format show where Paul Thurrott covers Windows tips and tricks. My show, Hands on Mac, which is also a short format show where I cover Apple tips and tricks. So not just the Mac, but also iPhone, iPad, etc. And the newly relaunched Home Theater Geeks featuring Scott Wilkinson, where he is talking every week about home theater subjects and occasionally talking to some big names in home theater, including the guy who is responsible for the TH in THX. I wish I could think of his name off the top of my head, but
Thomas Hamilton.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. So
Thomas Hamlin. I might be wrong on Hamlin, but Hamlinson, something like that.
Yes. So that is the Home Theater Geeks program, all available, twit.tv/clubtwit to join the club. All righty. Christopher Lawley, we'll start with you. Where can folks find your great work online should they want to check out what you're up to?
Yeah, thank you for having me. You can find all my stuff on YouTube, just Christopher Lawley, Lawley, or you can go to theuntitled.site, and all my links are there to Mastodon, YouTube, all my various projects and stuff like that.
Beautiful. Thank you so much for your time today and for being on the program. We appreciate it and would love to have you back again in the future.
Thank you.
All right, up next, Andy Anatko from WGBH in Boston.
It's Tomlinson Holman. Sorry, I got that.
Thank you, Tomlinson Holman.
But anyway, actually, I was on a little bit early this week. So if you go to WGBHnews.org, you can hear the show that I did yesterday. Next week, I'm on Thursday, I think at 12:30. Go to, again, WGBHnews.org to listen to it live or later.
Beautiful. And last but certainly not least, Jason Six Colors Snell.
Thank you, Micah. Good to have you here the last couple weeks. Thank you for sitting in for Leo. Sixcolors.com for all my Apple and other tech-related stuff. And if I had to... Leo always asks me to promote one thing, so I'm going to do it. Relay.fm/downstream. The Downstream podcast I do with Julia Alexander. It's all about the world of streaming media. We dropped an episode today. It's actually a pre-record because she's on vacation. But if you've ever wondered why it is that sitcom reruns are very successful on streaming, and yet new sitcom intellectual property never comes from streaming, we spent a good half hour pondering, like, why is it that that streaming services are great for old sitcoms but terrible at making new sitcoms? So yeah, if you're interested in the world of streaming media, check out Downstream. Julia, I am there. Julia, however, is brilliant and knows a lot, so I'm also present.
That sounds awesome. Yes, definitely check that out. And you can find me at Micah Sargent on many a social media network, or head to chihuahua.coffee. That's CHIHUA.coffee, where I've got links to the places I'm most active online. Thank you all for tuning in to this episode of MacBreak Weekly. Now, get back to work, because break time is over.
There is no honor in break time.
Hey, I'm Rod Pyle, Editor-in-Chief of Ad Magazine, and each week I join with my co-host to bring you This Week in Space, the latest and greatest news from the final frontier. We talk to NASA chiefs, space scientists, engineers, educators, and artists, and sometimes we just shoot the breeze over what's hot and what's not in space, books, and TV. And we do it all for you, our fellow true believers. So whether you're an armchair adventurer or waiting for your turn to grab a slot in Elon's Mars rocket, join us on This Week in Space and be part of the greatest adventure of all time.